Eye on the fight. Things nobody noticed about Khamzat Chimaev versus Gilbert Burns. The people's main event did not fail to deliver. UFC 273 has wrapped up, and Khamzat Chimaev and Gilbert Burns gave fight fans around the world a battle for the ages. But the question on everyone's minds was, is the hype legit? Well, we got a lot of answers. But is there a chance the judges got it wrong? The fight was razor close, much closer than anyone expected. That's what we are here to give you, an eye on the fight, breaking down things nobody noticed about Khamzat Chimaev versus Gilbert Burns. Round 1, as intense as it gets. At the beginning of the battle, Burns, on his face, it was obvious that he was nervous, and Khamzat, on the contrary, came out to give people a show and almost paid for it. As he said, he was to tear off his head and snatch his heart. And this somehow interfered with him in battle. Khamzat wasted no time taking the center of the octagon. Hungry for the first round finish many people predicted, he circled Burns back to the cage, like many sambo fighters from the Caucasus region do, and follow a lead across with a shot in on Burns' hips. If you watch closely, Burns throws a lead hook that clips Khamzat behind the ear and wraps around his head. The first punch Burns landed. In real time, it looked like the shot misses, but in slow-mo, it lands it on the sensitive area towards the back of the head, and Khamzat actually drops through a knee before driving for the takedown. Khamzat is known for his dominant grappling, with many fans around the world comparing his smothering wrestling style to that of Khabib. Because of that, everyone wanted to see how he would look against an elite grappler like Burns, who is a former world Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu champion. Physicality is another big part of Khamzat's game. Another aspect reminiscent of Khabib, his mother Burns against the cage in the clinch, giving him no space to work with. An interesting moment came when Khamzat's knees burned to the groin. Burns responds by looking at the ref, but no intervention is made. Perhaps this was a bit of a payback for that punch that landed on the back of the head. Then physicality came into play when Khamzat displayed his otherworldly strength by picking Burns up in an attempt to drop him on his back to the canvas. However, Burns highlighted why the phrase "there's levels to this" is one of the truisms of MMA, placing his foot between Khamzat's legs to prevent him from being able to finish the slam. Punches from the bottom and in the clinch were a part of Burns' defense, as he returned a fight when Khamzat had him in a knee against the cage and started working in some ground and pound. Khamzat knew that Burns was using the fence to help him maintain his posture, so he once again utilized his ridiculous strength to literally drag Burns away from the cage. In a sequence never before seen in his career, Khamzat was unable to control Burns on the ground the way he had ragdolled every other opponent. Every time he got into a superior position, Burns slipped out. He decided to stand up, and ref Mike Beltran stood them up. For essentially the rest of the fight, this battle between two world-class grapplers was concentrated on the feet. The first low kick Burns threw actually knocked Khamzat off his balance. It was an effective strike for Burns throughout the fight, but he didn't go for it as much as he probably should have. Future opponents, of course, may want to work this technique into their game plan. It was only 2 minutes into the fight, and Khamzat had already absorbed more significant strikes than he had in his first 4 UFC fights. Not only did he have more resistance in the grappling, but he was facing more adversity on the feet than any other UFC adversary he had presented before. Burns landed 2 straight shots that landed clean, but Khamzat ate them like hot mash, egging Burns on in his response. One aspect of Burns' striking that's often overlooked is his superb footwork, which was on display at the 2-minute 28 seconds mark. Khamzat attempted a jab-right straight combination, but Burns utilized his footwork to intercept the strikes and counter with a left hook that landed heavy. The positioning of his body essentially blocked Khamzat's right cross, and Durinho was able to dart out of range after landing the counter. The footwork allowed him to evade the massive uppercut that Khamzat threw as he was exiting, which might have ended the fight right then and there if it had landed. Heading into the final moments of the round, Burns looked like he had a clear advantage on the feet. There was even a moment where it looked like he scored a flash knockdown, but if we were to take a closer look, we can see otherwise. Khamzat lowered his head, likely feinting a takedown to try to land a massive overhand left. Burns countered at the same time, but his punch once again wrapped around the back of Khamzat's head. It's unclear whether Burns landed with his fist or just his forearm, but Khamzat was knocked off balance because of the position of their elite legs. It's probably lucky that Burns' counter didn't land cleanly because the force of the punch was strong enough that the momentum carried Khamzat off balance in the opposite direction. Against what fans and odds makers thought, Burns was making a statement that he was better on the feet. Everything changed at the 53-second mark of the round. Khamzat dropped Burns with a light and quick jab, the same punch Usman finished Burns with at UFC 258. This changed the entire outlook of the round, as Khamzat might have lost it if not for such a big moment. Khamzat lunged in for the kill, but Burns defended extremely well. Chimaev began raining down on ground and pound, but Burns returned the fire with hammer fist from the bottom. He also nearly landed an upkick, and it looked like he was going to try for a triangle, but instead uses his leg to push Chimaev off of him. The first round was as intense of a first round as it can get. We got so many answers. How would Khamzat fare against an elite grappler? How tough is Khamzat's chin? Will Durinho be able to withstand Boer's power? How much of a factor will the size difference be? Round 2. Adversity makes warriors. Although the first round wasn't nearly as easy for Chimaev as his fans expected, the display of power at the end of the round gave the feeling that Bohr's finish was inevitable. However, Gilbert Burns had another things in mind. His mission was to derail the hype train, and he was ready to give it his all. One thing became clear early in the round. Khamzat respected Burns' power and striking. For the first time in his UFC career, he was on the back foot, working to avoid Burns' straight punches. Khamzat began working Burns back towards the cage and began throwing out straight shots, looking for the same position that he dropped Burns in at the end of the first round. However, Burns made the adjustment, countering a right straight from Khamzat and landing clean. Khamzat wobbled for just a moment, but recovered it nearly instantly, displaying his toughness and great chin. However, even the most granite of chins can get cracked. At the 3-minute mark of the round, Khamzat ate the biggest shot of his career, a left hook from Burns that caused him to drop to the canvas. If we zoom in, once again it looked like this shot wraps around Khamzat's head. However, this one lands right behind the ear, sapping Khamzat's balance for a moment. It's reminiscent of the punch McGregor landed against Poirier in their first fight at featherweight, where Poirier dropped after McGregor's hook landed behind his ear. One thing people may have missed is the legal hammer fist to the back of the head Burns attempted as Khamzat dropped to his knees. Regardless, the momentum of the fight completely shifted in this moment, this time with Burns hunting for the finish. Burns chased Khamzat down with a flurry, landing big shots. However, it looked like he was gassing in the process. Khamzat was battered and bleeding, but he stayed in the pocket, tough as nails. Despite taking more damage in these moments than he had in his entire UFC tenure, Khamzat weathered the storm, landing a few counter shots of his own. A failed takedown from Burns led Chimaev to attempt a Dar's choke, but Burns slipped out of it easily, threatening Khamzat with an armbar. When Khamzat created space to get his arm out of danger, Burns landed a ton of hammer fists from the bottom before using a push-up kick to get Chimaev off. It was a wild display of Burns' creativity even from his back. Both guys appreciated the crazy sequence, exchanging smiles after they stood up. In the final seconds of the round, Khamzat landed an uppercut that made him step on the pedal. However, he had a counter from his troubles, easily the biggest shot he's ever absorbed. This punch was as flush as it gets, and the fact that he didn't get knocked out then and there is a testament to how good his chin is. Khamzat was rocked bad, but tried to move forward, hitting another hook that sent him to the canvas. This is not something people likely missed about this fight, but it has to be mentioned. Burns attempted an illegal soccer kick that would have disqualified him if he had landed on Khamzat's head. Although you probably didn't miss the failed soccer kick, you may have missed the moment at the end of the round. Khamzat was able to get Burns down against the fence, but lingered on top of him after the bell rang. Instead of waiting, Burns decided to push Khamzat off of him, prompting Khamzat to attempt a hammer fist. Mike Beltran had to step in and separate the fighters. It is unclear whether Khamzat hammer fist was payback for the illegal kick or he was simply pissed off that Burns had shoved him off. Either way, the intensity was sky high going into the third round. It was all tied up, a round apiece, and the winner would be determined in the third. Round 3, just bleed. The fight was everything fight fans dream of, a back-and-forth war between two extremely talented and technical fighters who were ready to leave everything they had inside the octagon. It all came down to the third round, and which fighter wanted it more. After a back-and-forth start to the third, in which both fighters landed some shots, Burns attempted another takedown. It was the closest anyone has ever gotten to getting Chimaev on the canvas, but Burns was able to pop right back up to his feet. The takedown attempt may have sapped some of Burns' energy, as he was breathing heavily and becoming more stationary against the fence. Burns smelled blood and began opening up with a flurry in an attempt to finish the fight. When they separated from the clinch, Burns knew he had to pick up the pace and get something working. After eating the heavier blows against the fence for the most of the round, Burns started moving forward at the 1-minute, 38-second mark of the round. From the center of the cage, he was able to work his boxing to greater effect. When he was pushed back, he threw wild bombs, finishing for that one-shot KO. However, with space in the center of the octagon, his straight shots and lead hooks were landing effectively. In the final minute of the round, Burns started landing bigger shots. However, Burns refused to show any chink in the armor, inviting Burns to throw more after every punch he absorbed. After the bell, the two men embraced in a warrior's moment, actually headbutting each other. It was as good of a fight as anyone could have hoped for. Easily the best fight of the event. When all was said and done, the judges granted Khamzat Chimaev the unanimous decision, 29-28 on all three scorecards. Final thoughts: did the judges make the right call? After the fight, many felt that Gilbert Burns had won the fight. Most people agree that Khamzat clearly won the first round, while Burns clearly won the second, so it all comes down to how the third round was determined. Although he started pouring it on in the final minutes, the fact is that Burns was pushed up against the cage for most of the final round. He absorbed more significant strikes, even if his final flurries landed with more power. Since nothing became of the takedown, it doesn't make sense to give the round to Burns because of it. Effective grappling involves being in a dominant position or closing in on a submission, and neither of those things happened. Therefore, we can safely say that the judges got this one right. It's interesting to note that if Khamzat didn't land the knockdown in the first round, he probably would have lost that round and the fight. However, he secured 2 rounds to win the fight decisively. What do you guys think? Do you agree with the judges? Are you still aboard the Boar's hype train? Or do you feel he got overexposed in this fight? Let us know in the comments. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to hit like and subscribe for future UFC fight breakdowns.